Talking about three make on their Aims page and how to avoid them. So I'm just gonna pull up my notes here. But first of all, if you're new around here, I am Sarah Dobson. I am a research grant consultant and I help early career researchers who are applying to NIH. And so, of course, one of the big topics of conversation always is the Aims page because it is the most important page in your entire application. And getting it right is trickier than you might think. So let's talk today about three mistakes that I see often and how you can avoid them. So, mistake number one is talking to the wrong audience. And this is really about framing. This mistake is really common in applications where you have multiple options in terms of which study section your grant ends up in. The important thing to remember here is that you always want to write your Aims page so that you're generating excitement among the people who really care about the same things that you care about. They care about that gap in knowledge that you're trying to fill. So here's an example for you. So a few years ago, I worked with a clinician scientist who was using machine learning to build a model to predict how a specific disease would progress. And the reason for that was so that clinicians could make better decisions about which patients might benefit from surgery and which ones would have maybe a more predictable clinical course. So she'd made a couple of attempts at getting this project funded, but she wasn't having much luck. So when I read her Aims page, I noticed that it focused on the machine learning algorithms and it went pretty deep into the technical details about the tool that she was building. But when I asked her which study section she was targeting, it turned out that she was writing this for the disease experts, the clinical experts. And so there was a huge misalignment there. The clinical experts don't really care about machine learning. They don't care about the tool. They care about the outcome. And so they're not going to get excited about a project that focuses on the technical details of the tool development. But they will get really excited about a project that helps clinicians make better decisions for their patients, right? So we reframed her Aims page so that it focused more on the clinical problem and described her tool as something that would help solve that problem as a means to achieving a solution, right? And it's the exact same project. It's just framed in a way that resonates with her target audience. And sure enough, after working together, she got her project funded. So keep that in mind as it is relevant to you, right? Are there multiple audiences that this could benefit or that this could be targeted towards? And which one are you most focused on? And then make sure that you are framing your Aims page in a way that speaks to what your target audience really cares about, okay? So mistake number two, no clear outcomes. So a lot of Aims pages end with the details of your third aim. You kind of make your way down the page. At the very bottom of the page, you're kind of cramped for space. And so you finish describing aim number three, that's it, you're done. But that is not really helping the reviewers understand the big picture, right? That's really one of the key objectives of your Aims page. So what you really want to do here is make sure that you leave space so that you can tie everything together nicely for your reviewers. You want to remind them of what you're trying to accomplish and what the benefit of those accomplishments will be in the longer term. Do not make them figure it out for themselves. So actually, that might be a bonus mistake and a solution that we can cover here. So the mistake is that PIs assume that things are obvious or self-evident when they aren't actually obvious or self-evident to anybody except themselves. And this is especially true when it comes to the value of the research or the reason that the research ought to be done in the first place, right? So don't make that mistake. The solution is always to connect the dots for your reviewers. Make it really obvious and really clear to them how you're thinking about this. And the benefit of that, aside from making it easier for your reviewers to follow along and understand what it is that you are doing, it also minimizes the chances that the reviewers are going to come to a different conclusion that you've come to, right? You don't want to leave them to draw their own conclusions. You really want to spell it out for them and make it clear that you're both saying the same thing or you're both agreeing on the same thing. There is still a chance that your reviewer might disagree, but there's a much greater chance that that will happen if you don't actually make what you're thinking explicit. So it's really, really important to connect those dots for your reviewers, to make it really clear and to not make assumptions. about what they might agree with. Okay, so mistake number 3 is trying to cram as much information as possible into your Aims page. And that's where we see 1/2 inch margins, just a big wall of text, and really sort of impenetrable writing. And so, what I want you to avoid here is overwhelming your reviewers, right? If you get an Aims page that's just a block full of text, it's going to be really overwhelming and kind of disorienting. And oftentimes, especially early career researchers, take this approach to the Aims page because they're anxious about showing that they've done the reading, right? Showing that they know what they're talking about. But what it actually ends up doing is disorienting your reviewers and confusing them. So you need to really rein it in, and you need to focus on telling a story and really guiding your reviewers from broad to specific, right? So you want to avoid diving right into the details right away, because what that ends up doing, it's sort of like if you're giving somebody turn-by-turn directions, but they don't actually know what the destination is. It's like, where are you taking me? Where are we going, right? So the way that you can do that, again, is by going from broad to specific and saying, this is the big problem that we're trying to solve here. This is the gap in knowledge that we're filling in this specific application. And by filling this gap in knowledge, we're going to be able to contribute to solving this larger problem and kind of continuing on this pathway, right? That's sort of the structure that you want to aim for. And you want to think of it on your Aims page as sort of like an appetizer before the main course, right? You just want to give them a taste of what's to come. And that means that you really have to trust that you will be able to get to the details later on. That your goal here is just to give that big picture snapshot of what your overall project is and why it needs to be done. And then you'll get to all the details later. And that can be pretty anxiety inducing, but it's really important to recognize the purpose of your Aims page versus the purpose of your research plan. And the purpose of your Aims page is really to orient your reviewers to the broader project. So by really kind of reining it in and staying high level, staying big picture, you're going to give reviewers what they need and that taste of what's to come. And you'll be able to generate that excitement a lot easier because you have a clear story that you're telling and a simple story that you're telling. And that it does take some practice, but it is totally doable. So to recap, the 3 mistakes that I see and the 3 solutions to those mistakes are: number 1, talking to the wrong audience. So the way to avoid that is by making sure that you're clear on who you're speaking to and what they really care about. Mistake number 2 is not having clear outcomes. And the way to come around that and have a solution to that is to focus on a final paragraph that talks about what your expected outcomes are and what the benefits of those outcomes are. Mistake number 3 is trying to cram as much information as possible onto your Aims page. The solution there is to stay big picture and really tell a story. All right. So if you found that useful, we have a much more in-depth lesson on how to write an Aims page inside our free resource library, which you can access through the link in the video description. So that's it for this week, and I will see you next time.